there was some Facebook post that I read that said that they always stand up to wipe.
What the?
And
Can't
it was
even
like,
imagine.
do you stand up and bend over to wipe, or do you stay seated and like lift it?
Get
You
them
have
to
a
spread apart
cavernous
again.
crack
No.
sack?
You bend over to wipe.
Right,
You're in
instead
like
of-
a deadlift
So you
position.
so you keep it spread by bending over.
Yeah,
Right.
my concern with wiping sitting down is that my hand has to go into the toilet.
No.
And I'm going to touch
Okay.
poopy water.
Okay, that has happened to me for sure.
Really?
It's
You
not great.
touched the poop water?
No.
Accidentally.
How many times?
Like in my whole life?
I have never
A dozen.
knuckled.
That's not accidental at that point.
Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek, brought to you by Topo Athletic. I am your co-host, Zach Badger Davis. Sitting to my right is...
I am Juliana Chaunce, a.k.a. Chaunce.
You're quiet.
Yes, well,
That's my fault.
it's going to be a theme of this episode, I think.
Probably both of us, yeah. We'll get to the why on that in a second here. But a few reminders before we get into today's very meaty episode. The first one is we have a live podcast with a link where you can go and buy tickets, and you should. We're doing a podcast in Denver at the Skylark on December 7th, featuring our pal Kyle Hates Hiking, a.k.a. Kyle O'Grady. He's going to unveil a brand new trail mystery for us. We're going to do a Q&A. There's going to be some prizes. What else do we got going on, Chaunce?
You definitely want to get your tickets early for this one. They are cheaper online than they are at the door, and we also might run out of chairs. So
True.
The earlier you get your ticket, the better a chance that you get a chair.
You get to sit.
Yeah. You don't want to stand.
We should probably promise that people can sit because it'll be
Yeah.
a long podcast. But you should get.
You don't want to tease that? Just
Well,
tease them
we
with-
should say that it could sell out because I
Yeah.
think that's a real possibility this
Yeah.
time. Because after the podcast, we're doing our annual holiday hiker meetup. So a little soiree for the folks.
Oh, are we going to make that the official one?
Yeah,
So is that Palooza weekend?
it is Palooza weekend.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay,
I've been coordinating with Rachel to see if she can actually make it this year. We'll have to chat. But yes, it's going to be a very fun late afternoon and evening. The podcast begins at 4:30. And the holiday hiker meetup will be immediately after that. Should mention, if you want to come to just the holiday hiker meetup, you don't need to get a ticket to this, but we don't know exactly what time it's going to happen, as it's going to happen right after the podcast. So, and also the podcast is going to be great. Definitely
Yeah, you
come.
don't want to miss out on all the fun times we had.
Yeah.
Mere hours before.
Yes. Next thing is we are now officially accepting our blogger applications for 2025. Definitely going to be leveling up the blogger program for next year. We just hired a new community and marketing manager, as you guys have heard me talk in the reminders in the past, and her role is largely dedicated to making this program awesome. And one of the things that we're potentially cooking up is one of our top bloggers for next year will get flown out to the Denver area and put up and get to be a guest on this podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wowie.
Pretty sweet deal. So if you're toying with the idea of blogging your hike in 2025, hit us up. It'll be worth it. Lastly, but not leastly, if you guys enjoy this podcast and want to support us, please head to patreon.com/backpackerradio. We do a lot of exclusive content, including we're hoping to make one happen today with our esteemed guests, aka panelists, aka what did I say, certified dingleberries.
Yeah.
You did say dingleberries.
Yep.
I did find one today.
I believe you did. In one of your new dogs or in your own butthole?
One of my two new dogs.
Yeah.
You get their names out of your mouth.
I think the Patreon's going to be about going from backpacking to bikepacking. Going from bikepacking into buttpacking and out of backpacking all in one go. But yeah, it'll be something. It'll be something. All right, let's not keep these two in their cage any longer. To be totally frank, I don't know what today's episode is other than a Q&A. We didn't need to line much up for these two, so we're just going to go with
Got
it.
enough dingleberries
But
for
you
the
have
whole
to.
show.
Yeah.
You do have to read Rachel's
I
intro
already
because she's
did.
been on fire.
Yeah, Rachel is on fire. So we were doing an interview with Viking and Lieutenant Cuckoo Bird, both past guests, obviously. Jabba, a.k.a. the Real Hiking Viking, serves as both Backpacker Radio's entire HR department, as well as the person to cause HR complaints and violations. Viking is best known for almost being on reality TV, but then not actually being on it.
Which I am proud of.
Lieutenant Cuckoo Bird is known solely for hiking the Teton Crest Trail in an average amount of time. Yeah, Rachel is on
Do you
fire.
remember? Wait, do you remember why that's funny from the other night?
not exactly now.
So I introduced him and Garrett, and I had told Garrett, like, when I got back from the Teton Crest Trail, kind of like the recap of it, including that I saw Cuckoo on trail and he was doing the whole thing in a day, and that was like very demoralizing for me at the top of a climb, you know. And so Cuckoo gets there, and I go, Garrett, this is Cuckoo. He's the one that did the Teton Crest Trail. And Cuckoo looks at me, he goes, you know, I've done like a lot more than just that, right? He's like, you know, I've done like, and he starts like listing his resume stuff. Like, I've done like 5, like however many miles. I've done this, and I was like, yeah, but don't you want to just be known for the little stuff? So I was like, from now on, you're the guy that's done the Teton Crest Trail, and that's it.
And everybody was totally sober, and then the conversation went down.
Yep.
Also, I've done it twice. So throw that out there.
Well, don't go bragging.
All right. A lot of places to start here. I think anyone who's watching this on YouTube, we can go there. We'll be curious because you were
Still very much sober in theory.
yeah. So
No,
you were on the show in February. Was
Yep.
that the last time you were on here?
No, it was
Maybe March.
It was March.
Okay.
It was March.
And you were beginning sobriety
Oh
spell.
no, it was. The last time I was on the show.
Yeah.
I was drinking on the show, and then I said I was going to go sober.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was in February.
What a perfect
Correct.
way
You
to
were right.
announce that.
Say what?
I said, what a perfect way to announce that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was like, this is my last hurrah coming up. My birthday, 41st birthday's coming up, and that'll be my last time drinking. And I have, for what it's worth, been very good about not drinking largely.
I can attest to that. You've been to a few parties at our house where you've had nothing,
Correct.
and like things have been a
There
little
have
bit
been a
chaotic in the
couple of
background.
instances where I have partaken. I have not gotten like drunk the way that you are accustomed to me having a great time.
Yeah, sure.
You've seen some of those.
Yeah.
You've been privy to some of those. And I have had a few times where I've like had a few beers.
Yeah.
All right. So one of them being a wedding. Another time was with Jolly on the CDT. And offhand, I can't really think, but
A fantasy football draft.
a fantasy football draft.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We were very surprised
I came
and
back
excited
from
to see
Iceland
you.
early.
Yeah.
And I surprised the entire group. Everybody thought I was still in Iceland.
Yep.
And I was like, I will partake, but I did partake in the gin. By the end of it, I felt largely sober, by the way. So
Can I say something about you at the draft?
Yeah.
That was the most tired I've ever seen you look.
I mean, I flew in from Iceland, I think, the day before.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, I could tell that was a hellacious trip. From everything that you had posted on social media, it looks difficult, but, like, you physically looked tired.
Yeah. I mean, it was... we can get into it later if you want. I don't know when we want to talk about the Iceland trip. It was probably one of, if not the most difficult adventure I've ever done.
Yeah.
And
Is it possible to slide the mic just a little bit closer to your dome?
yeah, or oh god, or me. I mean,
Whatever's
We're on
easier.
the edge here, so I don't know what's. You want me to be louder? Is that what's happening?
Just closer to the mic, I think.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, I mean, flying back from Iceland, I think it's a 5 or 6 hour difference. I honestly can't remember what it is. Well, it's 5 hours from the East Coast, I think. Is that right? Either way, coming back from east to west is a lot harder than going from west to east, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, when I flew there, I went right into all of it. Like, so there was no like getting a grip of my sleep while I was even there. And I had maybe my best nights of sleep were like 4 or 5 hours when I was there. And then flying right back to, debauchery with you was just like, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I made the best of it, made the most of it. And as far as alcohol is concerned, I'm definitely like dialed it back significantly, but I have not been like stone cold.
Yeah. No, I mean, we had fun. You're great.
Yeah.
Your team sucks, but
Yours does too, by the way.
What is your penalty for the loser for this year?
So people get to choose between 3 things. I think one's been eliminated. One's run a marathon. It's been eliminated, one, because it's boring for the rest of the league, and I'm the only one who's done it.
And by the way, it was brutal.
It was very hard. I didn't train for it at all.
It was a marathon.
Yeah. But I did have the background. That was my 3rd marathon, so it wasn't like I was fresh to it, but it sucked. It
You
sucked.
did it all on pavement too, right?
I did on. I just literally was like running loops around my house at the time. Like it was so bad and stupid.
Yeah.
No, I was in so much pain afterward that like I couldn't even lay down in the fetal position comfortably. Like I had to go sit in a bathtub. That was the only thing that saved me. I don't know why a bath was the saving grace.
Yeah, I've never been so bad that I've actually lost the league. So I'm better.
The other two are, one hasn't been executed, which is the Waffle House thing,
Yeah.
but going to Applebee's and every signature cocktail shaves an hour off of your time there.
Oh, I gotta tell Garrett that one.
One pancake is like pedestrian compared to a signature
Yeah.
cocktail, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
By the way, I watched all of Garrett. Garrett, if you're listening, I don't know. Garrett doesn't listen to all
No,
these,
I
does he?
told him not to.
Well, tell him to. I watched. I was impressed up until a certain point, and then when your league gave you outs, I was very unimpressed.
Yeah, I was
They gave
too.
him outs?
Very unimpressed.
Yeah,
this?
they at the end he was like, I can't eat anymore, and they told him if he went to a bar and did 3 shots,
To
he
knock
could
out
be
3
done.
pancakes.
And me and his mom were both heckling him the whole ride there.
Yeah.
But IHOP themselves, Big Pancake, sent me a DM today.
I
They
saw
saw
that.
it. Yeah, it was
The
an
eyes.
eyeball emoji and a blue
Yeah.
heart.
Sweet. Do they
Yeah.
want to sponsor
I was
the
like, yeah.
podcast?
So do you want to like send me anything else?
Yeah, like
Besides these
more
two
free
emojis.
pancakes.
Yeah.
Spent 8 hours in your establishment.
Yeah.
It's too long.
And then
IHOP.
the last one is 5 minutes of stand-up, which has been the thing that's happened the last 3 years, which has been very entertaining for the group.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I could see that being great.
Unfortunately, the funniest guy in the group has lost twice, so it's been like funny and not embarrassing funny. This most recent one was kind of straddling the line, but it's good. It's fun. Okay, where I want to start is obviously 2 former guests on the podcast. Jabba's been on maybe more than I have at this point. But what have you guys been up to? Let's just constrain it to 2024, your adventures in 2024.
You're constrained, Cuckoo.
Okay, I'm constrained. 2024, earlier in the year in February, I went down to Patagonia. I flew to Ushuaia, Argentina, where I hiked around the Tierra del Fuego National Park. And then I took a bus to Puerto Natales, Chile, where I ended up going to El Calafate and then the Perito Moreno Glacier. I went north from there to Torres del Paine National Park, really incredibly gorgeous national park there in Patagonia. And then went north from there to El Chaltén and Glacier National Park, right there near with Fitzroy sort of being the staple mountain there, which is like the logo for Patagonia, essentially, the outline of that mountain range.
Yeah.
And
The only thing I know of what you said so far is Torres del Paine.
Yeah.
Can you just give us what of the things that you've done in Patagonia? What was the standout? Like, what's the thing that you'd recommend somebody go do?
Oof. Yeah, I guess it'd be to go to El Chaltén and try to get up to some of those alpine lakes underneath Fitzroy for sunrise. That was fucking awesome.
Because those peaks from where you are, you're facing the peaks and you're facing east to west, and the sun rises,
Behind
hits
you.
them.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh, it's awesome.
Is it like the O Circuit where they've got the established like campground areas where
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, there are established trails and campground areas as you're going into that part of the range, and then just south of there, hiked a 45-mile circuit known as the Waymo Circuit, which was awesome too. Getting deep, sort of in the backcountry in the area, seeing these icy glacial fields that just went on for miles and miles and miles, and these gorgeous glaciated peaks. Some really incredible terrain. Yeah.
Sick. What was after Patagonia? I know you've been up to a lot.
After Patagonia, I guess I went backpacking in the Redwoods for a few days. I've gone sea kayaking in the San Juan Islands off of Washington, and hiked the Teton Crest Trail.
I was waiting for that one.
I don't believe it.
The claim to fame.
Did it in a day, about 14 hours, 42 miles, 10,000 feet of gain, and what else? Oh, I've done some mountaineering stuff in the Tetons. Hiked to the top of Buck Mountain, and so I haven't really done a lot of mountaineering stuff. But
Buck Mountain requires mountaineering?
so
I'm just curious. I've been right next to it. I never went up it, so I'm unfamiliar.
I would say probably once the snow's completely melted, no. But I think once you need crampons and an ice axe, you're starting to get into that mountaineering territory. What I call it, difficult mountaineering or advanced mountaineering, definitely not. But I definitely needed crampons and the ice axe. In fact, so get this, I put the crampons on, right? I start walking across the snow, and I'm like, you know what? I've never really practiced self-arresting, right? When you use the ice axe.
Good time to think about that.
Yeah, right. And as I'm thinking about it, though, my feet give way. And
No way.
I start
No way.
as soon as I swear to God, so I've taken like a couple of maybe I've walked 10 yards. I'm like, you know what? I should really think about self-arresting. My feet give way. I start sliding down the face of Buck Mountain, and I remembered what a friend had told me, and I grab onto my ice axe, slam it into the snow, stop myself after about 20 feet or so, and I was like, well, okay, that was successful. I know how to do this now.
Yeah. Was there any particular technique? Because I think for a lot of people, they can imagine just slamming an axe into snow as they're sliding down. But
Yeah.
like, did you implement anything that?
2 hands.
Yeah.
One hand towards the bottom of the shaft, one towards the top, and you're essentially like bringing the spike of the ice axe into the snow and kind of like pulling your chest over your ice axe in a way, like so that you aren't just like slamming with one arm, because you could like pull your shoulder out of socket. So yeah, it was like a 2 hands and then putting more pressure into the spike into the snow to slow down and stop.
And you kind of want to like arch your body so your knees are dragging instead of like you being on your stomach.
So in that moment, it was just all intuitive feel
Yeah.
to what was working to stop me. And I did have crampons on too,
Aha.
which can be like, it can work to your disadvantage.
Sure, because if
it
those
could,
catch, then you flip over.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
That could absolutely happen. But yeah, I don't know. I was just able to slow down, and I had to self-arrest multiple other times. On my
What was
way
your
to the
approach to Buck, out of curiosity, from the pass?
Death Canyon to Static Peak.
Yeah.
Which, and then I had a ridge. There's a ridge line from Static.
Ooh, so you had to go down to that saddle and then go up? Okay.
And that saddle was difficult. It took me almost an
Yeah.
hour to do
Yeah.
that half mile because it was just dangerous and there were no great options. So I just had to choose what would work best.
Yeah. Teton Crest Trail, 42 miles in a day, 10,000 feet of gain. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
14 hours. And like, you
What did you and
sat
Elise do it in?
You sat and dicked around with us for like an hour at lunch.
That was
Like, you were not in a rush.
that was all right. So that was my second of 2 breaks that I took that day.
Yeah, but it was like long and you were unbothered. You weren't rushed.
Yeah. Well, I
You
just needed
chilled
some
out.
Advil. That was actually the other reason I talked.
He
to
needed
I
you guys
know.
as a training wheel.
But then you ate one of the sandwiches and
Yeah.
you just like talked about the flies and seemed in no rush. So I
Yeah.
didn't know it was 14 hours.
Yeah, the flies were just following you and Elise.
Yeah.
It was really strange.
Someone said that it's the color of the pack. Someone said flies are attracted to yellow.
What?
That's
Yeah.
got to be an urban legend or like a rural legend or whatever that is.
Where does that rank in terms of difficult days of backpacking output for you?
We had some days on the Hayduke.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was difficult, but I've hiked portions of the Tetons and those canyons multiple times, and I did the Teton Crest Trail in the past, so like mentally I was fully prepared. There's nothing that's overly difficult. It's pretty straightforward. You're on trail the entire time as opposed to the Hayduke or something where you're like route finding and orienteering and trying to figure out how to go up or down some pass or canyon or something. But yeah, I mean, the Teton Crest Trail, 42 miles for anyone in a day is going to be difficult, especially when there's 10,000 feet of gain involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as mountaineering goes, besides Buck Mountain, I also did Tiwanaut, which is one of the deadliest mountains in the Teton Range. It's sort of like the Grand and Tiwanaut. They share the most deadly, depending on the year. And a lot of times it's because of ill preparation or coming off of route and dealing with exposure or getting hit with a rock or something. But Tiwanaut was actually a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a really enjoyable climb. Difficult class 4.
This was recently?
Yes, a couple weeks ago.
Okay, sweet.
So not difficult like Europe Peak Class 4, which is kind of laughable in my opinion, which is on the Wind River High Route that we've done before. We're so concerned about Europe Peak, and then you get there and you're just like, it's one move essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, not nearly, far more difficult and deadly than Europe Peak. Europe Peaks seems just deadly for that like 20 feet of climb. Tiwanaut has about 7 or 8 of those circumstances, and then you're also sort of climbing up a couloir that the majority of people are doing, so you have to worry about all the other climbers potentially knocking rocks down on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cuckoo Bird was on episode number 194 and has what I think is probably the best hitchhiking story that we've ever heard on this podcast.
Thanks, man.
If there's a better one, I don't know who or what that could be.
Yeah.
Like that is all time.
Yeah, that is
story.
all time. Yeah. So definitely go back and listen to that one. All right, Jabby, since you've been on last, I guess there wasn't any adventures that you had been on in the first couple months of the year prior to the last appearance on the podcast. So I guess since you've
there was. I did the I bike packed the New Mexico off-road runner.
But that was after you were on the podcast.
Oh yeah. There was nothing before.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes, sorry. Misunderstood.
Yep. Give us the update.
Well, I did, like I just said, actually before the off-road runner, I attempted with Doozer, my buddy that lives up in Boulder, who's a bikepacking phenom. He and I went and attempted the Peaks and Plateaus route, which I believe is about a 170-mile bikepacking route through Moab and in a loop out of Moab, and we started in Moab. And on day one, we made it 25 miles, and then I had a piece of equipment have a catastrophic failure, and we had to turn back and bike back to the car, and we went home. It was kind of a bummer. We had a good time with what we did do, but 50 miles of bikepacking in a day was nothing. Was not what we wanted to do. We wanted to do, I think it was 2 nights and 170 miles, so 3 days. So I used a new bike rack that I had never tested before. It should have worked fine had I not been a dumbass and over tightened it down onto my frame. And there were some pieces that failed when I over tightened it, and that was basically what happened with that is user error essentially. And then a couple weeks later, we decided we'd go back and do a different route, and we decided to go back and do. We took a bus from Denver down to Santa Fe and rode 500 miles from Santa Fe down to Las Cruces, New Mexico. And that 500 miles is called the New Mexico Off-Road Runner. And it's a combination of paved road and gravel road. A lot of fun. Him and I had a blast. We did it in 6 days. The original plan was 7. And while we were out there, we were like, he's like, I want to get back for this thing. And I'm like, okay, I guess we'll do it in 6. That's what you want to do. and my ass took a beating on day 1. We did 90 miles, which was not in the cards initially for me. And on day 1, my ass, I'd never experienced this before. I did a 5,000 mile ride, as I've outlined here before. And at no point did my ass take a beating like it did on day 1 on this ride.
Is the painful ass akin to painful feet in backpacking, where you can be in
Worse.
really good shape? Well, I'm not even talking about the degree of pain, but more so you can just be in really good fitness. But if you haven't specifically worked on the repeat.
I would agree that I mean, so I can fast forward and tell a story about having learned my lesson in that moment, and later this year, I I'll explain it here coming up. But basically, yes, you are correct.
Yeah.
You gotta condition your ass like you condition your feet.
Yeah.
Very similarly. There's
Is there anything you can do? Can you just sit on a really uncomfortable chair all day? or something?
No. Absolutely not. What the thing is being in the saddle. I'm sorry, I'm keep getting away from this microphone.
You're good.
You got to be in the saddle and actually take actual beating.
Yeah.
Now you don't want to take a 90-mile beating to prepare for a 90-mile day. You want to take several 20-mile beatings or something like that, and then gradually get up to 30, 40, 50-mile beatings. And it's so within that, it's do you sit on that seat all day, or do you vary yourself by getting out of the saddle and doing some of the miles up? There's various ways to limit how much your ass is taking a beating.
Yeah.
But 90 miles, I had not been basically preparing for it whatsoever, and I can't even begin to describe it to you. It's feeling you're sitting on tumors. That's what it feels like. Those giant lumps buried underneath your skin, between your sit bones and your skin.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable. You get off your bike and you go and you sit down in a fast food restaurant to eat something, and you feel like you're sitting on lumps. It sucked.
I mean, my ass is in pain after like 20 miles on the bike, so I can't imagine 90 miles with gravel and weights.
So I had to do 90 miles that first day, and then had to do like significant mileage every day moving forward.
Yeah.
And there was times when Deuce and I were riding, I was like, man, this is like painful.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like I had like doubts about my every day I'd be like, oh my god, I don't know. But like by day 4 or day 3 or 4, I want to say, it started to like go away, and by the end I was like perfectly fine.
Here's what might be a really dumb question, probably is, and I'm sure there's a good explanation
There's
for it.
There's no dumb questions, Chaunce. Only stupid people that ask them.
Okay. Well, I might fall into that category then. But Zach, that red light is flashing, right?
Yes, it is.
I took my glasses off, and I always get scared. Here's what I always wonder, because I've done my biggest bike ride ever was a 36-ish mile one in one go, and I felt the same thing where it was like, wow.
Why did I do this to myself?
This hurts in places I didn't know it could.
Yeah.
But
now, was it the beating part, or was it like chafage you were
experiencing? It was like sore.
Yeah.
And just like continuing to hit like hard seat.
Yep,
Sore hitting hard seat.
Yep, gotcha.
And so I'm always like, when you do a long bike trip like this, why do people not have a comfier seat in that, like a computer chair seat, like a fat, like put me in a little throne on this bike. Why do people not do that?
I've had that same thought in the past before I became a cyclist. I don't even know if I could call myself that, but because there's obviously a lot that I have to learn and do still to be like more proficient. But I think at this point in time, you can definitely say that like I am a cyclist.
Yeah, for sure. If you're not a cyclist, then I never have any hope of ever getting there.
Yeah. So the reason is because the more contact your body has with anything that can be, you can be having friction with, it just means there's more that can be painful. All right, and friction can occur against all of it. All right, so the thinner, the lighter. I'm sorry, not lighter. The thinner and the less that you have going against your skin and your sit bone. The sit bones are the only thing that you want like touching essentially. Now you still have like some soft tissue that like requires some support because you don't want to be just sitting on like a fucking pole or something like that, right? Like that's not gonna feel good. You want as minimal as possible so you can reduce the amount of like pain and inflammation and like rubbing. You know?
Whenever you sit on a bike seat, I feel like it's always like between my ass cheeks.
That's what is exactly what you want. Your sit bones are basically straight up from between your ass cheeks.
But those are like parts of me that don't see daylight. So wouldn't you want the parts that normally sit and like normally have the contact?
I think without having the experience of trying that, and I never will, like I'm quite sure that like if you went and did like a 90-mile day on the most comfortable like cushiony pillowy, you're gonna have like red, like ingrown hairs and red spots and soreness and like chafage across a much larger surface of your body, essentially. You know
I've had the same exact
That's
thought.
upsetting.
When I go to the gym, I always pick whatever like bike machine I'm going to use by whatever seat is the most comfortable.
Right. Why not take one of those?
You're only doing like an hour at most on that.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, I get bored within 30 minutes.
Of course. Yeah, 30 to 60 minutes is likely the most anyone's doing on those, I guess, cushier seats, if you want to call them that. But I have personally done longer than that on those bikes in like winter. In the gym or whatever to like get training indoors because I don't have a trainer at home, and it gets more uncomfortable the longer you are on them.
Yeah.
And also and for what it's worth, also you haven't even gotten to the question of like circulation. Like the more you're sitting on, the more you're compressing, and the less you're getting circulation wise, and the more nerve damage you could be doing too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What about like something that is bike seat sized, but it's in two halves, and so as you pedal, you know how your butt cheeks.
They have the bi-saddle,
and it moves with
your
cheeks.
Is this a popular thing with?
Oh, I don't know if it moves like that, but you can adjust it like however you want for you, and then you have like a center like that's like open essentially from that.
See, I'm thinking of like something on a shock. So like as I pedal and my butt cheeks
saying.
go up and down, it's like.
What I would
don't
say
give away all the good ideas for free.
Sorry,
what I would say is you're getting into the realm of losing efficiency at that point in time. All right. The reason you like people, I would say it's a similar concept to why people aren't wearing like super cushiony like Hoka One shoes on their bike pedals, because you're losing energy in that transfer. And similarly with a bike seat, like the more cushion you get, the less the less you're getting from a when your body is being like compressed up and down, you lose a certain amount of energy.
Yeah, the same reason you don't want shocks on a road bike is like
right, exactly.
You're losing.
So, and by the way, somebody out there who's listening to this, again the caveat that I am not a professional like of an elite level with cycling, so somebody else might have a different answer, or at least a more direct answering that more directly and in a better, smarter, more knowledgeable fashion than I am.
Well, I'm a specialist, so.
And I'm sober.
Okay, so you did the Moab trip. Where are we now?
So Moab, and then New Mexico right after that, and then I did. And by the way, between those two, I did CDT not trail days, but kickoff. All right, and then after that went back to the CDT, because last year I hiked half the CDT. This year the plan was to go back and hike the other half. So I went back down, took the bus back to Santa Fe, and then took. Actually, Teresa Martinez of the CDTC, the exec director, she graciously gave me a ride up to Ghost Ranch on the CDT, and then I hiked north from there, hiked to Chama, where I linked up with Jolly of Jolly Gear. He came out because he had miles to do as well from a couple years ago. He broke his foot and didn't finish his CDT through hike. So a couple of dudes who were looking to get sections done began their trek out of Chama, and we started hiking north in Colorado. And him and I had a blast together. It was the first time we had spent time hiking together. In fact, it was not the first time we had met. We had met actually on my big bikepacking trip 2 years earlier in 2022. When I was on the second half of my big 5,000-mile loop, I made it to Bear Lake in northern Utah, and that is like about an hour drive to Logan, and Jai lived in Logan. He drove up, picked me up, we went back to his house, spent a night there, him and his now fiance, congratulations buddy. They took me in, they fed me, bathed me. No, they made steak that night. It was awesome. They definitely went big, and that was awesome. So him and I got along then. We had already kind of had a little online, bromance going on, and I had been talking to him for a couple of years, like, hey, we got to do a hike together, and it just lined up this year. He hiked northbound on the CDT from the border. Went northbound from Crazy Cook, and 2 years earlier he hiked southbound from Glacier National Park all the way to Grand Lake, Colorado, is where he got off because of a broken foot. So his whole thing was hiking the rest of that from that Grand Lake to the southern border, but going northbound. So he made it all the way to Grants, then got off trail and did like AT trail days and a bunch of other stuff. And then instead of getting on back at Grants, he decided to meet up with me at Chama, and we went from Chama to I-70 together, and I got off trail to go to Iceland from I-70, and he continued and finished at Grand Lake, and he still has a small section left from, that's a couple hundred miles, from Chama down to Grants. So that was what we did. Big section, I think, maybe like 500 miles or so, give or take. And like I said, we had a blast. His parents drove from Alabama, which is where he's from. He's an Alabama boy, Roll Tide. And Roll Tide. Roll goddamn Tide. And his parents flew out. They are awesome people. They're trail people. A lot of people don't know this about Jolly. I don't think you've had him on yet. You've been trying to get him on. But his first through hike was when he was like 18 years old, because his dad wanted to do it. And him and his dad did it together. And he'll tell the whole story. But that him and his family are big ATers. They're like maybe an hour or two, I think, from the southern terminus of the AT. And they love trail life. They love helping hikers. They love taking them in. And they drove all the way out, met up with us in Leadville. And from Leadville to I-70, they just like met us at all these points, and we like did basically like day hikes. We like kind of slack packed from like point to point, and we stayed at like the Leadville Hostel. We stayed in Breckenridge. They stayed in a couple other places, I'm going to say, but I can't remember offhand. But they would like buy, make dinner for us, and they were awesome people. I had such a blast. His parents were so nice and so caring and loving. And then I got off trail. Came down to Denver from I-70. My girlfriend Kate picked me up. I said goodbye to Jolly. I said Cuckoo, Jolly. I actually almost called him. Actually, I did call him Cuckoo like 100 times on trail. Bearded dude. The only like hiking partner I've like spent a lot of time.
Dudes look the same.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least with me. But so I haven't had a lot of hiking companions over my whole like hiking career. Zach, you and I hiked the PCT together, of course.
How dare you cheat on me, son of a
Yeah,
bitch.
right. And then Cuckoo and I have done a bunch of different hikes together, and then now Jolly was on trail with me, and I did talk about Cuckoo a bunch, like hey, this is like the way Cuckoo would do this, or this is how Cuckoo, not saying he was doing anything wrong, but
What do you think Cuckoo's wearing?
Crying himself to sleep at night. It was Cuckoo.
No, it was funny. You should bring it up when you have Jolly on sometime. You're like, hey, how are you most like Cuckoo according to Jabba? He'll probably totally forget and be like, what the hell is Cuckoo? So then I would say the crux of my summer was walking pants down, blindfolded backwards into this Iceland trip. So little context, little backstory.
You skipped over an entire adventure.
With what? With
Iowa.
Jolly? What?
Iowa.
Oh shit!
Why do I know your?
Oh yeah, and this is the context to why it's smart to prepare for a bikepacking trip. Thank you for reminding me, Zach. I did totally forget about biking across the entire state of Iowa this summer. Thanks for reminding me what I've done this summer. Fuck, I'm such an idiot.
Too busy thinking about
Can we take a break? I need a break. I need a minute to collect myself. Okay, so. While I was on trail, it was never a plan to go to Iowa ever. It was a plan just to like hike to Grand Lake and get off trail from there. Where there it is again. Where Jolly was finishing his. We were going to plan to finish in Grand Lake together, and that's when I was going to get off trail. But where I think I was like near Mount Elbert or something like that, or maybe I was even further south. Maybe it was in the Collegiates or something like that. And Doozer gives me a ring, and he's like, "Hey, dude," he's like, and if you don't know, Doozer has like a giant like Ragbrai following. He like Doozer
What following?
Ragbrai.
What's a Ragbrai?
Ragbrai is the event that has been going on for 51 years now.
The event.
I would say it's probably one of the biggest cycling events in the entire country.
Maybe the world. Probably the world.
Maybe the world. I can't attest to that or speak to that.
I will.
But let's just fucking the world. All right. Basically, every year there's a new route that goes from the Missouri River to the Mississippi River, about 500 miles, give or take. And people, like last year was the 50th anniversary. There was like 30,000 people cycling. Like it is mostly road. There are like a couple of like gravel routes and whatever within the day that are very short in the grand scheme of things, but it's mostly road. And people from all over the world, every state in the the United States, there's representation, and people are like riding like tricycles, unicycles, like road bikes, mountain bikes. There's like people that are like on e-bikes and pulling their dogs in like crazy like carts and all this kind of stuff. It is a like full-blown carnival on wheels that's mobile. It's wild. Now, going back, Doozer gave me a call on trail, and I picked up, and I was like, he's like, yo, dude, we had somebody in our group, a group of 200, by the way. It was the biggest group in all of Ragbrai, even bigger than the Air Force. The team
How do you even
Doozer,
have a group of 200? Like, how do you coordinate anything?
Well, you basically just like are part. It's just for like registration purposes.
Okay.
Now, the majority of people are like we're like camping together. So there's like 100+ people camping together.
Are you guys wearing the same singlets or anything?
There's a pink Team Doozer shirt.
Okay.
How long is this?
How long?
Yeah.
It's 1 week, 7 days, 500 miles, give or take. I think
Is there like times you have to meet to keep going?
it's at your own pace. It's at your own pace. It's all about like what you want to do and how you want to do it. Certainly, like Team Doozer is completely fractured throughout the day. Like you might there's like 5 to 8 towns along the route per day that you could stop at and get like food. It's like literally every town stop is like a carnival.
I want to do this.
Can
you invite me next year?
You can go do it by yourself.
That was not the point. I want to do it with the thousands and millions of people.
Well, you can.
I want to do it with people from every state.
Literally everyone is doing that. That is what it is.
You just have to like there's like a
show up.
registration process
It's
and
not
stuff
like
ahead of
this
time.
day to this day.
It is that
like
day to
that.
that day, but you just have to register.
So why are you
for
telling
it.
me to go a different day?
I'm not telling you to go a different day. I'm just telling you to fucking go. You don't gotta like be with
I want to be
people
there with
when
the festivities.
Actually,
it's happening.
let's convince
You
her
show
of
up,
different days.
It's happening.
Imagine like a marathon, but it's across the state. On a
Yeah,
bike.
imagine a festival that you
so
show.
like you register for it, and like there's a time where you show up, so you'll be with the people there.
But it's like in October.
It's in June. Was it in June? It was in June, I think.
Thought it was in
July.
August.
I don't
Okay, so
remember.
there's a time where. So what are you telling me to go do it?
I think I went to Iceland in the beginning of August. Yeah.
I wanna
no,
do
it's
it
in,
when
it's in
people
June.
do
It's in the
it.
end of June or July. It's in the end of July.
I want to do it with the masses.
You can't not do it with the masses.
If I did it tomorrow, I wouldn't be with the
That's
masses.
not Ragbrai.
That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
want to do the one.
Then
the
you
thingy.
can.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
telling you that you can.
Okay.
All right, so in
So you're gonna invite
2025,
me?
we're looking at July 19th to the 26th.
Okay. I don't have plans.
Don't make them and just show up, and the masses will be there no matter where you turn. You
heard it
cannot
here for a
avoid
sec.
them.
I'm team member 201.
yeah.
Every
Jabba
day-
invited me.
Every day, everybody starts at their own leisure, and it's just like you bike as hard or as slow as you want, and you bike with the people that you want. If you meet someone out there you're having a good time with, you just stay with them.
This
You
feels
know?
like
Sounds like
something.
thru hiking.
Sounds like something where everyone has a concrete plan, and you're trying to ask them what the concrete plan is, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know, whenever you want,"
Do you
because
show
they
up at
don't
a-
want to tell you.
Do you show up at a music festival with a concrete plan?
No, but I
That's
show
what
up
this
when
is.
the music festival's happening. I'm
Yeah,
not just go
exactly.
to
That's
Fiddlers in
what-
December.
You're making my point. You just made my point.
July
Show up
19th.
when Ragbrai's happening, and the good times will be had.
Yeah, I think we're overcomplicating. This is actually very simple. See,
Okay, so Doozer calls me.
Something's not
Doozer
sticking.
Doozer calls me and he's like, "Yo, dude," he's like, "somebody backed out and they're offering up their entire like registration fee, and like there's people like hire charters if you're in a big group that they basically like they truck your possessions like a duffel bag from like town to town, so you
So
don't
how
have to
do
like
you
carry.
just show up if there's registration fees?
Well, you have to register.
You register
you get a
and then you
ticket for a
show up.
music festival, right?
Right.
Right,
Yeah,
just like
same
that.
thing.
Same thing. Same
Chaunce, you signed up
Guys,
for
I'm
a
asking for
marathon,
the
right?
people. I'm asking for the people. I'm not
Of course,
asking for me. I know all this.
Sure.
We're
I'm
trying to
asking
map
for
it
the
out.
listener that might not know.
No, so and also for what it's worth, you can probably do it without registering too. You can probably just show up with your bike
all right.
and just be like, there was like 20,000 people this year.
Yeah.
You think they're checking everybody's like everything?
No
No,
way.
people are just doing this. It's not like it's not the New York City Marathon or
I
something
would.
like that.
I hate registering for things.
Right.
Okay,
I'm
so
in.
we'll do it together.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
there you
we'll
go.
do it
wanna
whenever we want.
Do you want to do one of those tandem bikes?
Hell
Yeah, I
yeah.
fucking
Okay,
dare
cool.
you guys.
I bet there's a quattro tandem
You're gonna
out there.
literally hate it.
Why?
I just can't imagine going on a bike with somebody else for that. Like,
Right.
like fuck that.
Actually,
you don't know
to
our
be-
friendship. We get
also,
along great.
Well, also my pace, I do have a feeling your legs would just be off the pedals. most
Yeah,
of
no,
the
that's why I'm inviting you on a
Oh,
tandem bike.
perfect.
Cougar, no! As you're going downhill.
I take the back seat. He turns around. I'm just sitting there with my legs up.
So he says, hey, you got basically a free entry and the charter. And I was like, I probably should get my ass ready for Iceland. Like, this is 7 days on a bike. Even if it's not like aggressive riding, it's definitely still like getting me in the mode mentally, getting my butt in a saddle for 8 hours a day at least, and so that made sense to me. And I was like, hey, Jolly, I'm gonna have to bail on our last segment of our predetermined hike. And he was like, oh, Jabba, like, and I was kind of bummed too, because we were a good team at that point in time, and it's always tough to leave somebody on trail, right? That sucks. I don't know if you guys have ever actually done that. Have you ever left
I'm
somebody
not
on?
fast enough.
Yeah, okay.
I'm the
Have you
lefty.
ever left the trail from your like hiking either partner or trail family?
It could be tough.
Maybe.
That sucks. That sucks. Have you ever done that, Zach? You like when you got like West Nile or something like that, or?
There's one time where I bailed on the Lone Star Trail, but the guys that I was with also bailed too. So
Smartest guys you've ever hiked with, that's for sure. Shout out Jersey. Shout out Gossamer Gear. So, anyways, decided to do that. Made sense. Had a blast. It was honestly one of the most fun things I've ever done. I definitely will do it again. And then I literally within like 24 hours of finishing Ragbrai. And it was like within 24 hours of getting off the CDT, I was in Iowa cycling east towards the Mississippi River. Within 24 hours of getting off of Ragbrai at the Mississippi River, I was on a plane for Iceland and like not knowing what I was getting myself into without even knowing that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was just...
There's your knowns, there's your unknown knowns.
And then, yeah, this was the unknown. That's what I literally, in hindsight, oh man, this was the, like... I try and like place myself in the like headspace and perspective of like, would I have chosen to do this had I known what was really in store for me coming up? So here's the context. Like months ago, actually years ago, Chris Burkhardt and I like started a little like friendship. And if you don't know who Chris Burkhardt is, he's a world famous like photographer of every type, film and still he's one of the best that has ever done it, at least at this point in time. And he and I both had signature backpacks with Mountainsmith overlapping. Now he no longer works with Mountainsmith, as I obviously still do, but that's where we kind of began knowing about each other. He was like using my Zerk 40 at times, while he also was making his camera backpack with Mountainsmith. And then I got into cycling, and he started like noticing some of my cycling adventuring, and then we started like kind of like bonding over the cycling aspect of things, because he's a maybe like 7-8 years ago he really started getting into it, especially from like an adventure bikepacking standpoint, especially from like a big day like monster day racing standpoint. And last year he raced the Tour Divide and did it in like, I want to say like 14 or 15 days or something crazy like that. Maybe less. May have been like, I forget what the record is. Whatever it was, he was trying to win it, and he placed 7th. And I am not a racer. I'm not a racing cyclist by any stretch of the imagination. I got a heavy bike, I got a lot of gear, and I've never put forth like a monster racing effort by any stretch of the imagination. So Chris and I were like, hey, we should go on a bike ride together sometime. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, man. Let's go on a bike ride together.
Yeah.
And like, at no time did I weigh the consequences.
This is why I don't go on any bike rides with anyone who's serious about bikes, is because I'm sure that what you're describing is going to be the same thing, but from them to me.
Yeah, this is even more than whatever that would be, I would say. I mean, like, I'll get into it a little bit. And of course, I know we want to get into like what Cuckoo Bird's done, and we don't want to leave him out of the equation here, and I don't want to take all the other room. All the
next time he speaks, he's going to be 6 beers deep. You're gonna have heard nice Cuckoo Bird in the beginning, and then he's going to come back on and just like
we take it. We've literally we're at a bar later. We're still drinking, and I'm still telling the story. So
I like that we're also piling all the empties by him, so it looks like he drank them all.
Supreme alcoholic. I don't drink.
These are all mine.
Yeah.
No, you put one spring cans.
I slid this one.
Those
here.
aren't all
That's
yours,
mine.
buddy.
Shut your mouth.
This is a 12.
This one is mine.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're right.
That one.
Like an old married couple.
It's working.
I'm drunk.
Right. So, anyways, I'm like, yeah, Chris Burkhardt and I are gonna have a great little adventure together. And for what it's worth, like Chris has been like plotting this route, with an Icelandic local for a couple of years. So he's been doing all of the tedious legwork of like, like satellite imagery and like knowing what we're getting into more or less. Like he's never ridden it, but he is like plotting it. All right, no one's ever ridden it before, for the record. And his desire is to submit it to bikepacking.com as a route that other people can do, which at this point in time sounds fucking insane to be advertising what we did.
You're telling
to
people to not do that.
Yeah.
Also, can I ask that? What's the distance? This sounds sick. What is it?
325 miles.
Okay.
All right. From the northernmost point of Iceland to the southeast coast. All right. And directly through the interior and on the east side of the Vatnajökull Glacier. I mean, not the entire time, but if you get down to that. Yeah, I just was like, I'm going to go ride bikes in Iceland and it's going to be fucking epic, which it was, but like, man, did I not know. Man, did I not know. I didn't know. Down to the, like, didn't know what the weather was going to be like. I didn't even look at, like, what latitude this motherfucking island was on. All right? This latitude is, like, above the Hudson Bay. Okay? Whoa. Like, this shit is, like, I don't know what I was thinking weather was going to be like, but I'm glad I had at least the bare minimum clothing to be dealing with what I was doing. Holy shit, dude. I mean, the entire
Did you guys not coordinate about, like, what's the appropriate apparel for this thing? Or
Yeah.
did he just assume
Do you know me?
No,
I'm kind of gathering that Jabba is like being brought along as a test subject to prove to bikepacking.com that anyone could do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey,
no,
I'm not going to give you
no.
any hints on this. Just come and show them that you can do it.
It's well established. Like, before you set out for your cycling adventures in general, you're like, yeah, I don't even know how to change a tire. Like, you're like, I don't know shit.
Yeah, he's like, this is the perfect guy to bring.
And then you figured it out on the fly.
Yeah.
I just would have assumed that you and Chris would touch base on being like, here's a rough packing list on what you should bring for Iceland.
He said here, like, watch this video, a YouTube of mine, like, on this other route that I've done. And I was like, cool, I will.
Can I get the Cliff's notes?
I packed the morning that I left for Iceland without watching the video. I asked some questions, but I'll well, if you can see Zach right now, he's losing his
you
shit.
can't because he's out of frame. Lean in.
It's just, I know
Laugh
Viking,
in.
and this is 100% predictable.
The only thing I was concerned about that I asked questions about was, like how have you, like, kept your fingers and hands from, like, going numb?
Yeah.
You know, essentially.
Yeah.
I was like, I never asked what the temperature was going to be. I just, like, said, hey, are you bringing, like, waterproof gloves and socks? And he's
Yeah.
like, absolutely. And I brought those things.
Yeah.
And those things literally saved my life.
I need my fingers to work when I get back. I've got a lady at home.
But here's the thing. Every single day, I couldn't feel my fingers and my feet for hours on end.
I've heard that Iceland is
Hours.
extremely windy, rainy, and cold.
Extremely windy, raining, and cold would have been a nice heads up. Like, to myself. Like, I wish I had, like, checked on that. You know, I may have, like, brought like an extra, like, I don't even
Bathing
know.
suit.
I don't even know what would have, like, curbed the uncomfortability factor.
Yeah.
I think you just have to deal with a certain level of that no matter what you pack, because once they get wet and cold, it's not like there's no getting them warm on their own unless you're walking.
Is it just your hands and feet that are mostly the problem, or is it your whole body?
Nope, just hands and feet.
Okay.
Because they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
They're not, like, when you're hiking, like, you can generate blood flow to your feet and hands.
Sure.
When you're biking, you cannot, because the wind chill factor is ripping through everything.
Yeah.
All right? Even if you're going slow, it's happening. Because it's windy on top of it.
You're
too.
wearing waterproof gloves, I assume?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
How
like,
many is a
neoprene
lot?
socks?
Say again?
Like neoprene socks?
Yeah, like sealskins.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used a company that gave me free stuff, like, 5, 6, 7 years ago, a company called Dex Shell, and I'd never used them. I'd never, like, tested them. I just was like, I'll bring these. They're just, like, in my gear bin, you know? Like, oh, these are the ones that I'll use without testing them. They did a good enough job. They saved, like, me from getting, like, significant, what is it called?
Frostbite?
Frostbite, thank you.
And
Or
that's
worse.
just good enough job. They saved
Shout out
all of my limbs.
So Chris was like, yeah, we're gonna be doing about 50 miles a day. We're gonna do it in about like 6 or 7 days. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, day 1 and 2, I did 187 miles. All right. It was because like, the average works out to be about 50 miles a day.
Yeah.
But, like, weather windows and the way, so there's, like, huts that, like, are, or, like, a couple, like, a town or two that are at various places along this route. And, like, when you have a good weather window day, you got to make the absolute most of it. So you can, like, get ahead of weather so that if the weather comes in and bogs you down, you can, like, take a 0 day and not be, like, so far off your itinerary that, like, your food is going to run out,
Sure.
kind
Keep
of thing.
the average.
Right? Exactly. So you have to get ahead when you can. And we did. And so the first 2 days was like, let's go all, I mean, I'm just off the fucking plane. All right. And I'm like lack of sleep and like
Was he there earlier? Like, did he acclimate to the time?
He lives there. He lives in Reykjavik.
Oh shit!
He's been living there, I
whoa.
think, 2 years now.
Okay.
His whole family, his wife, his 2 kids. So I mean, he travels all over. Like he's in, like, I think he's in California right now. But he lives there full time. Yes, he's acclimated to the amount of light that is happening a day, which is like, I think there was like, maybe there's like 4 hours of quote unquote darkness. And it's like you still see light on the horizon kind of thing. It's wild because you're so close to the Arctic Circle, you know? What's going on here?
I'm trying to do
He's
sign
telling me
language.
he's gonna go
I
pee.
have to pee.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3,
1.
1.
Skip to 2.
You bring your own too.
So day 1 and day 2 were a lot of time in the saddle. And just Chris is such a more effective and efficient and stronger cyclist than me that I'm cycling on my own each day. Chris is ahead, long ways ahead, like out of view. Like the first day had some like, I want to say the first 50 miles, 40 or 50 miles was on mostly paved road. Well, some gravel, but some paved. It was like 20 or 30 miles of gravel to start. By the way, in like the most fog I've ever been in my entire life. I was like breathing water. It was insane. It was a whole endeavor just to get to the northernmost lighthouse in Iceland. Like we had to like hike our bikes out to it for like a mile or two just to like start this thing, and then had to like hike our bikes out because it was just like boulders and sea line, and it was wild. I mean, I can't begin to express to you what a contrast this is from being on the Divide 48 hours earlier. Well, I guess I wasn't on the Divide. I was in, humid Iowa on the Mississippi River 48 hours earlier, essentially. And then it was just a 9-hour drive to even get up to where we started, all right, along the northern coast of Iceland. So I can't begin to describe to you the, like, just shock of difference of, like, terrain and ecosystem and just, like, climate in general. It was just so weird. I felt like I was in a, like, I don't know, like a dream, just being there in general. Just like, what am I fucking doing here? Yeah. You know?
I have a question that is, because you mentioned Iowa and then Iceland and getting from one
like
to the
the
other.
eyes.
Yeah, the eye places. How do you get your bike there?
There's basically the kinds of boxes that bikes are shipped in when you buy them. You use those to travel with them overseas as a basically a checked item.
So you have to break them down?
Yes, you have to take the pedals off. You have to take the handlebars off. You have to take the front wheel off, and all of the bags. Yeah, it's tough. It's like it's a pain in the ass.
Every time I hear you talk about bikepacking, it just makes me like hiking more.
I mean, you could just cover more ground, man.
Yeah, no.
You know?
We don't have to rehash it.
Yeah, right. So anyways, so day 1 and day 2, like are faster going because of the amount of miles we could put in each day. But like, it is apparent that like this is not going to be a cakewalk right away. And there's a section right away, like I'd say right away on day 1, about midway through day 1, where it goes to single track. And well, let me just go ahead and explain to you. I have exactly like 1% experience, like mountain biking on single track, bikepacking on single track. Like I'm not even a mountain biker on single track. I just have had a little bit of experience on the GDMBR and on the Western Wildlands route where you just get a little taste of single track. All right. This gets into miles of single track that is deeply rutted. Have you ever hiked on a deeply rutted single track where like your heels are kicking the high wall? You know what I mean?
You usually just hike off trail.
Yeah, there was zero option for that on a bike.
Yeah.
And so my pedals are literally, by the way, this is, again, the first trial run on this route. We are officially at this point in time on hiking on a hiking only trail. We didn't know it going into it, but we had no other option, no other route. And so we had to sadly cycle through this single track that was taking us to this, I don't know the name of the river, but it gets into a national park that I want to say gets into this unbelievable waterfall called Dettifoss. And Dettifoss, if you've ever seen the movie Prometheus, have you ever watched it? Anyone here?
Oh yeah.
The opening scene, like credits, like the opening credit scene, I think that's what it's called, shows Dettifoss, it's basically like I don't know if it's a glacial river, but it's definitely like a churned up, crazy, muddy, wild river through crazy terrain. And in the beginning of Prometheus, you see one of the engineers, the aliens who create basically humans and the aliens. He drinks that black liquid, and then he starts decomposing immediately and falls into this.
The silty waterfall.
That's Dettifoss. And so I'm cycling single track down to Dettifoss, essentially, and I'm like, Chris is already like miles and miles ahead of me, and we have like a team of his photo assistant and his studio manager are following us, not on the trail, but like using roads to access our route as much as possible so they can film us, because Chris is like, I think they're going to make like a short film about this. And
are you going to be in it?
Yeah, I mean, I assume I assume I'll be in parts of it. Yeah. I don't know how much. I mean, it's not on me whatsoever to determine that. Yeah. But they definitely did film me throughout the route for sure. But so the
the single track difficulty, which by the way, single track, I didn't understand what that was until earlier this year. Essentially, it's just an extremely narrow trail where only one track can go down at a time. I didn't know that.
Yeah, single track. I mean, every hiking trail is a single track, more or less.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
So I am like doing my damnedest to stay on my bike on this single track, but then there's these like crazy rock features that you have to like physically pick your bike up on these like little like mini cliffs throughout these like and my bike is on day one. I mean, it's like this fucker's like 70-80 pounds. All right, and it's awkward, and it's like it was a lot to take on day one just from a mental standpoint, but I had to have like I didn't have to tell myself this. I just inherently kind of had this attitude like I'm gonna deal with whatever the fuck is in front of me, because I'm with Chris fucking Burkhardt, and you don't fuck this up on day one with Chris Burkhardt. Like this guy's trying to do something that's never been done, and I have to like suffer through it. All right.
Yeah.
So my attitude was such that like just have fun with it, even if it's hard. And so you go into like this like mindset of like mission mode, like where I always recall like my time in the Marine Corps of like you will find a way to get through this.
The obstacle is the way.
Yeah, of course. And on top of that, like just have a good attitude. Like you don't have no reason to have a bad attitude. You're in a place that like you've never been, that's unbelievable, that's so unique and so stunning and so vexing, and like take it in for what it is and do the hard thing that you're doing. And like on top of it, like Chris and his team already worked out all the logistics for you.
Can I just hit the pause button here?
Yeah.
This has to be insanely difficult, because I've done things in my perception that were insanely difficult. And I've never heard you refer to it the way that you're talking about this.
I'm in uncharted waters for myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I've seen you do crazy difficult things, and I've never heard you have to, like, psych yourself up about, like,
because I'm trying to keep up.
Fun.
Because I'm trying to keep up with, like, an elite cyclist.
Yeah, no, it's just, I'm just trying to put it in perspective for the listener that
you don't want to let that guy down. It's basically like,